Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss Jane Austen novel Pride and Prejudice. This is a very famous novel and you will like this video. The novel Pride and Prejudice was published in 1813. It is a social satire about a family with five daughters in 19th century. The title has been taken from the Fanny Burney novel Cecilia, the memoirs of an heiress. As you probably know, the original title of the Pride and Prejudice was First Impressions. Jane Austen named the title of her novels on the predominant quality of her characters, like sense and sensibility, and so on. In the novel, protagonist Elizabeth Bennet becomes prejudiced against Darcy, and on the other hand, hero Darcy is proud and arrogant. So that is why the name of the novel is Pride and Prejudice. It is set in countryside of Hertfordshire, England, which is in the outskirts of London. There are two localities, Netherfield Park and Longbourn. Bannet's family live in the Longbourn, and so the family lives with their five daughters. And this is story is about basically about the Bannet's family only. Head of the family is Mr. Bennet. He is wise and modest gentleman, but his wife, who comes from slightly lower class, is desperate about her daughter's marriage. Her only aim is somehow to get her five daughters married, because if they are not married after death of Mr. Bennet, their property will go to their nearest male relatives. In this case, it will go to Mr. Collins, their relative. So the daughters have to find some rich husbands or else live in poverty or do some work, other work. So see how unfair the property rights law were for women in 19th century England. That daughters could not inherit property of their fathers and they have to live on the just mercy of their husbands. Mrs. Bennet is very excited because Charles Bingley's rich eligible bachelor is arriving in their neighborhood. So she's making plans for that. At this, Mr. Bennet says, who is a very serious man, and he is not so much excited. It is the truth universally acknowledged that a single man in the possession of good fortune must be in the want of wife. Means Mr. Bingley is single and he is having good fortune. So and he is a bachelor also. In this way, he tells so. He make a satiristic comment. So Charles Bingley arrives in the Netherfield Park along with his sisters Caroline and Mrs. Hertz, Lucia Hertz. Caroline is unmarried and Lucia is married. Few days later, Bingley throws a dancing party, a dancing ball for all the people of neighborhood. Bennets are excited, super excited, and they take part in a dancing ball with their boisterous mother. Let's know about sisters one by one. The eldest daughter is beautiful Jane. She is quiet, shy, and modest. Second one is protagonist Elizabeth, lively, intelligent, and witty. She is more like her father. The third is pretentious and scholarly Mary. The fourth and the fifth sisters are Lydia and Kitty. They are brats actually, flirtatious and playful. Lydia is more shallow and superficial. Eventually, she runs away with a scoundrel in the latter part of the story also. So, in this way, Pride and Prejudice begins. In the ball, Charles Bingley and Jane fall in love at first sight. But Jane is too modest to express her love and emotions freely. Bingley's sisters like Jane, and their sister is in law because she is poor. But they don't like Jane as their sister in law. At the ball, Bennet's sisters also meet Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, who is best friend of Mr. Bingley. He is a very rich man, owner of Pemberley Estate. But Bennet's sisters do not like him, they do not like Darcy because of his intense pride. Darcy is very arrogant and uneasy in manners. He doesn't talk with anybody. When Bingley tells him to dance with Elizabeth, he snobbishly declares, saying that she is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me. How mean is that? To tell a lady like Elizabeth like that? Elizabeth overhears this conversation and she instantly gets prejudiced against Darcy. She becomes judgmental. Darcy behaves snobbishly and does not talk to anyone in the party, so Bennet's sisters begins to dislike him more. On the other hand, they are very impressed by humble and lively man Charles Bingley. Few days later, when Bingley tells Darcy about his passion for Jane, Darcy even tries to prevent him from pursuing Jane, because at the latter part of the novel we come to know that why Darcy did so. It was because he thought that it was just one-sided love. It was love from just Bingley's side and not from the Jane side. So in this way, novel proceeds. Bingley leaves suddenly to London with Darcy, and Jane is again depressed that my love has gone like that. In the meantime, Bennet's sisters meet some one handsome man, military man officer, George Wickham. He is a fortune hunter. Wickham is a fortune hunter. He is a real villain of this story. He is a gambler and a womanizer and whatnot. But his cunning, he's so cunning that he is pretending to be very nice and an innocent man, and she's trying to impress ladies. And Elizabeth, who was so proud in her judgment that she can judge people, fails to recognize his true colors, and gets attracted towards Wickham, who was villain of the story. Wickham cooks up a fake story that how Darcy's father loved him so much and would have given him so much money and share in his property, but Darcy influenced his father and he could not get anything. And listening to this story, Elizabeth believes him totally, and prejudice against Darcy becomes more and more intense. She thinks now that how cruel Darcy can be. But on the other hand, Darcy is changing. He's shedding his prejudices against Elizabeth. He begins to realize how beautiful and witty Elizabeth is. And he thinks how wrong he has been all the time in judging Elizabeth, how wrong he was in his first impression, how wrong he was in hurting Elizabeth in this way. So he begins to love Elizabeth. In the meantime, Mrs. Collins, a clergyman, visits Bennet's sisters. He comes to Longbourn. He is their relative. The entire property will go to Collins after Mr. Bennet's death. Collins is funny man. He cracks many jokes. He tells snobbishly that his patron is Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and she has given a very high post in the church. He is soon going to become a dean, and he also tells that Lady Catherine has advised him to marry soon. है ना? In this way, he tells them so, and he wishes to choose his wife from one of the Bennet sisters. In this way, he tells that he is going to favor them. Collins first chooses Jane, but when he is told that Jane is already engaged to Bingley, within a second he chooses Elizabeth. But Elizabeth rejects him at the same speed. Collins then quickly turns his attention towards Charlotte Lucas, who was best friend of Elizabeth Bennet. And Charlotte is different kind of girl. She wants to marry just for security and not for love. So she accepts Collins' proposal very happily, and they are engaged and they are married, and they go to London, Kent. And here Elizabeth promises her friend that she will visit Charlotte in the near future. Then story moves forward, and after some days, Jane gets a letter from Bingley sisters, telling that Charles Bingley doesn't want to come back to Netherfield. They are enjoying in London with Darcy and with Bingley with sisters in this way, and they cooks up a romantic story about Charles Bingley and Darcy's sister Georgiana. They tells that they are engaged in this way, and they shows a fake story. Now reading this, Jane is very depressed and unhappy, and Elizabeth is concerned about her sister's happiness. Elizabeth blames Bingley sisters and Darcy to ruin her sister's happiness again. To cheer Jane, Bennet's family sent her to tour so that she can change her mind. And at this time, Elizabeth also visits Charlotte Lucas at her new home in London, that is in Kent. There she meets Lady Catherine de Bourgh, which is Colin's patron, who is Colin's patron. She is Miss Lady Catherine is also aunt of Darcy, Mr. Darcy. Catherine is rich spinster. She is very snobbish, upper class, arrogant lady, and she does not like Elizabeth at all. She tells that Elizabeth is an obstinate, headstrong girl. So her opinion about Elizabeth is not so good. And so again, Darcy also arrives to Kent, that is near London, within a few days to visit her aunt Catherine. Now he is a changed man, and when he meets Elizabeth, he likes her very much. He even proposes Elizabeth for the marriage. But one thing is to be noticeable that his proposal is very insulting. He tells her that although I don't like your family background so much, I still love you. So Elizabeth is very angry. She rejects his proposal at his face. She tells him what kind of proposal is this. She tells him that how cruel he has been to Jane and Bingley for by separating them, and because he has prevented Bingley against marrying Jane, and how wicked he has been to Wickham in dishonoring him. Darcy doesn't reply at all, and at that time he goes silently. But later on, he writes a explaining letter that that he'd advised Bingley against Jane because he thought that Jane is not at all interested in Bingley, and Bingley is just forcing himself upon Jane. So he tells like that, and then he explained furthermore that Wickham has got his share of property already, but he wasted it away on gambling. And that's not enough. That wicked Wickham tried to molest Darcy's 15-year-old sister Georgiana. Now, reading this letter, Elizabeth is shocked. She thinks, oh my god, what a foolish girl I have been all around. All the time I considered Darcy to be mean and proud, and now she is regretting her mistakes. She is regretting her prejudices, her pretensions, her actions. But what can be done? In the meantime, Elizabeth gets a letter from Jane that the letter tells that their youngest sister Lydia has run away. She has run away with wicked Wickham. Now Elizabeth fully recognizes that how wicked that Wickham is. Their family will be disgraced. She thinks nobody will marry Bennets. She goes to her family back and she tries to comfort her parents. And the family tries to locate Lydia, but they're not able to get Lydia, and so they're very much worried. At this time, Darcy comes to the picture, and he brings back Lydia and Wickham. That Wickham was demanding some money from Bennet's family, which is the money was paid by Darcy. In this way, the matter is settled, and Wickham at last is ready to marry Lydia. So now move forward. And what happens now? Now Elizabeth is changing. Elizabeth is grateful to Darcy, and she is completely in love with Darcy. At this, Darcy again proposes Elizabeth, and this time Elizabeth accept Darcy's proposal very happily. And there is happy marriages all around. Um, everything is well settled. Bingley and Jane, Darcy and Elizabeth, Lydia and Wickham are all good matches and fixed and happy. So in this way, it was a very interesting story, and the characterization is brilliant here. Jane Austen characters are round and they changes with the time. They progress as the novel progresses. Darcy changes. Elizabeth changes. Elizabeth realizes her mistakes, her judgments. She tells her father, "Father, I want to marry Darcy." And at this, father asks her why. At the beginning, you didn't want to marry Darcy. Then Elizabeth tells that in the beginning I was wrong. I was I was wrong in my judgment, but now I has changed. So it is a human to make mistakes, but we all have to realize our mistakes and correct it in the time. And that is what Elizabeth does. The epilogue of the novel tells us that they lived happily ever after. Pride and Prejudice is considered a classic novel. Here, characterization is brilliant, brilliant use of irony. Novel's message is clear and deep. It is subtle, and it is though in the outward it looks like a love story, but it analyzes the class conflict and social pretensions and prejudices. This novel also deals with the financial aspects of marriage in 19th century England. Novel's theme and characters have been relevant for centuries, which is why there is so many adaptations of the novel. So that is all about the Pride and Prejudice. Hope you like this video, and if so, please like and subscribe to my channel and share the video with friends.